Good morning. This is Alexis Schaus. I'm the Director of School Business at the Department of Public Instruction, and you have joined us today for a webinar called Dissecting Charter School Funding. We have with us today charter school administrators and personnel, local education agency personnel, some legislative staff, and I'm sure many others. During this webinar, I'll be illustrating how the charter school funding is calculated, beginning with the appropriations authorized by the General Assembly for the state public schools, how these funds are allocated to the local education agencies, and how the charter school funding is calculated based on these allocations. By the end of this hour, if I've done a good job, you'll have an understanding of the funds the charter schools receive in their base allotment and other funds that the charter schools are eligible to receive. You're welcome to submit questions as I move through the process, but in the interest of time and keeping the flow of the presentation, I will stay with the presentation, but I hope to have time for Q&A periodically. If we do not, I will provide written answers to those questions to the individuals who ask them after the webinar. So with that, one of the reasons for this webinar is due to the confusion out there that there are funds about which funds charter schools are beneficiaries of. So I'm going to start with kind of a quiz of some common misunderstandings that we hear out in the field. Okay, so true or false? Charter schools do not receive lottery funds. This actually is false. Public education is supported by 4 large revenue streams: general fund appropriations, fines and forfeitures, sales tax, and lottery receipts. Charter schools are beneficiaries of all these funding sources, as the funds support the allotments provided to all public schools, school districts, and charter schools. In 2014-15, approximately $250 million for classroom teachers and $113 million for teacher assistants were funded from lottery funds. This funding source was changed a little bit in 15-16, and we have approximately $310 million for non-instructional support in lieu of those other 2 categories. The amounts are represented in the state base allotment for charter schools, although you won't specifically see them identified as lottery funds. There is the capital funding that comes from the lottery funds. This is $100 million, and charter schools by law are not eligible for capital money. The amount equates to approximately $65. So that portion of that statement is that they are not eligible for the $100 million. So true or false? Charter schools receive funds for school nutrition. The state actually does not directly fund school nutrition. There is the exception of $2 million in school breakfast. But with that being said, we do have a lot of state expenditures, well, $8 million in state expenditures that are used for child nutrition from school districts and charter schools. And the child nutrition program is a federal reimbursement program, and as I said, it's not a state program. So, charter schools do not receive transportation funds. Sometimes I hear this, usually from charter school side. All charter schools receive a per pupil equivalent of the operating funds appropriated for transportation. This includes the fuel, drivers, and supplies and maintenance for the yellow school buses. There is a portion in the base state funding that could be attributed to transportation. So K-5 charter schools receive funds appropriated for career technical education, or do 9-12 charter schools receive funds appropriated for K-3 teacher assistants? Both these statements, in theory, are correct. The base funding includes all initial allotments and does not differentiate by grade of the student served. Sorry for the typo there. The base funding, in concept, is a funding formula. So it takes all the allotments and it provides an average dollar amount by student. We don't say, oh, well, this charter school is a K-5 school, so they only receive funds that a school district would receive based on K-5, etc. The funds, when they go to the charter school, they do lose their identity. That is the whole purpose of the charter school funding formula, is that the funds lose their identity and should be used by the charter school to best fit their educational program, as outlined in their charter. So, the law. The law states for state funds that we will allocate to each charter school an amount equivalent to the average per pupil allocation for the average daily membership from the LEA in which the charter school is located. And then separate from that, the charter school will receive an amount for their eligible students who are children with special needs and for limited English proficient students. So that's all we have to go by. And as a general overview and in simple terms, what this means is that the state-based allocation per student is all what we call the initial allotment. These are pretty much the allotments that are formulaic and stable from year to year, is how I would categorize those. What is not included is driver training, and we'll get into a lot more detail on this as we go through. But driver training, because LEAs are funded for that and are responsible providing the program for homeschool, private school, and charter school students. Children with special needs and limited English proficiency, as outlined in the law, are not included in that base allotment. Funding for fines and forfeitures from school technology, and actually connectivity is included in this, is provided separately as a revision. So it's not included in that bottom, in their state-based allotment. And then there are some restricted grants and other entities, other funds of money that we're going to go through in detail to illustrate what is included and what is not. So we're going to move on, and as part of this webinar, I've prepared an Excel workbook. This workbook should be available to you as a handout. It is called Charter School Funding, and if it is easier for you to download that and have it on your desktop, I certainly suggest that you might do that. We're going to work off this, and there are, when we look at, you'll see on the screen that there is separate tabs at the bottom. They start with tab 1, and there are separate tabs, and we are going to go through sequentially through tabs 1 through 6. So hopefully you're all familiar with an Excel workbook, and you will see the tabs at the bottom of your screen as we go through. So let's start at the beginning, which is the General Assembly passes the state budget, and the appropriation lines for the State Public School Fund are authorized. This document under tab 1 shows all the budget for K-12 education as authorized by the General Assembly for 2015-16. It's really split up into 2 sections: state aid, local education agencies, and then at the bottom half, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, starts other public school appropriations. The top part are really those allocations that go out to the school districts, and the bottom part is really the restricted grants, DPI administered funds, guaranteed allotments, and we'll discuss these more as we go along. I want to draw your attention to 2 items from this document. One is, you'll notice as you look through this, that there is not a line for charter schools. Charter schools are not an appropriated separate line item. All their funding is incorporated in the different budget line items for public schools. So that is the number one kind of item that you need to think about, because when we fund charter schools, we're pulling a little bit from each one of these line items to transfer the funds over to those schools. The second item is when you go down to the bottom of the page, you'll see when we were talking about who receives lottery funds, it has the total state public school fund requirements. That is $8,954,759. Well, anyway, you get that. So that is the total amount of the budget for K-12 education. You'll then see in parentheses $520 million, and that is the amount that is funded through receipts. So the bottom line grand total state appropriation is actually what is appropriated through general fund. The $520 million are the receipt supported lottery funds, fines, civil penalties. The highway fund actually used to be the DOT, driver's ed, but is not any longer, and the sales tax refunds. So as you can see from that, the support for the receipts support K-12 education, charter schools, and school districts. So what I did is I took that document and I cut it up a little bit to make it a little bit easier. On tab 1A, it will show all the initial allotment categories. So this is kind of the typical what people think of, I guess, for K-12 education. And they account for $7.9 billion, or 87% of the total budget. And this is, all these line items are what we use for calculating the charter school base state allotment amount, what some people used to be referred to as dollars per ADM. That was a term that was a little confusing for some, so I kind of changed the terminology to state-based allotment per student or per ADM. You'll see at the top there, we have the positions and months of employment. And this is more for the benefit of charter schools. I'm assuming that the school districts out there are familiar with this. But school districts are funded, much of their funding is provided in the form of positions. These are the classroom teachers, instructional support, school building administration, those are your principals and assistant principals, career technical education, and then the benefits associated with those positions. So when we hear about in the General Assembly that kindergarten students will be funded at 1 teacher per 18 kindergartners, a school district is provided 1 position for each 18 kindergartners they have in their school district, and they employ that individual, and the state will cover the salaries for that individual as they are required to be paid off the state salary schedule. So they might employ someone, a beginning year teacher at $35,000 or a 25-year teacher at $50,000, and the state covers that. Out of all those positions, we calculate state average salaries and school district average salaries, which is the conversion rate that we use to provide the dollar amount per student to the charter school. So where a school district might have 1,800 kindergartners, and we're going to convert that into 100 teachers, and then when we move that over to the charter school, we convert that at the average salary for that school district, which might be $45,000, and that is what's incorporated into that charter school base allotment. So for the instructional support, which is your guidance counselors, your media coordinators, your social workers, those are also converted and provided to the school district in the form of positions, converted to the charter school at the LEA average salary, with benefits, I should add. Moving to the next group, which are called the dollar allotments. These dollar allotments go out kind of how people like to think about budgets. You get X dollar amount per student, and here's your bucket for that category. So those are fairly self-explanatory with how those get into the budget. The categorical allotments, these are kind of more equalizers. They are related to the demographics of the student or the demographics of the school district, and they do provide a variance of state funding by county. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of the detail of some of these and how they affect the charter school funding. We have at the bottom there the guaranteed unallotted dollars. These are amounts that don't go out as a dollar amount to the school districts, but they are provided as the state covers the expenditures for these items. One is annual leave payout, for instance. When a teacher leaves the school district and there is a payout, they code the expenditure and the state covers that amount for them. And you can see the other items in there, the compensation bonus differential, that is the $750 bonus this year, the personnel services, and you can see the details included within that category. So all those items are items that are included in the initial allotments, the $7.8 billion, and they go into the state-based allotment per ADM for charter schools. So moving to tab 1B, you'll see that these are all the other items that we saw on the state appropriated sheet. I've kind of tried to divide them up into groups to make it a little easier. They don't all fit nicely into one of these groups, but I wedged them in regardless. So starting at the top, we have $18 million in the School Technology Fund and the School Connectivity of $21 million. These items do go out to charter schools and to school districts, but they go out as revisions. They're not part of the initial allotment. So as kind of a revision of funding happens during the year, you might see in the allotment system that you got allocated generally not a huge amount of money, but that's what that is, fines and forfeitures, school tech. Allotted based on population of students at the charter school per the legislation. So these are your children with special needs or children with disabilities. That is allocated to LEAs and charter schools based on the eligible population with IEPs and is provided a dollar amount based on the school district's eligible amount for children with special needs. The limited English proficiency, that is also done based on the population in each charter school and in the school district separately. So they are not dependent on one another. And the Excellent Schools Act. Charter schools do receive these, but only those who have a first, second, or third grade. These are for the summer reading camps. About $35 million of that is for summer reading camps this year. Last year, we had just third grade eligible. This year, the General Assembly added additional funding for first and second grade summer camps. So charter schools with a first, second, or third grade would receive funding for this. Charter schools who did not have those grades would not be receiving funding for it. The difference in the $35 million that I just spoke of for the summer reading camps and the $44.7 is other items related to the Excellent Public Schools Act, which all LEAs and charter schools are treated the same way with regards to services or funds. Then I have this category, direct funding provided. So we have advanced placement. Last year, the General Assembly funded for the first time all advanced placement exams and actually international baccalaureate exams. And if charter schools have students that take AP exams, they are eligible, and we pay College Board directly on behalf of all LEAs and charter schools. College Board bills us, and we pay for the statewide number of AP exams. The liability insurance for public schools at $3.1 million Both LEA and charter school employees are covered, and DPI pays the claims for anything against that insurance. I mentioned driver's education previously. Charter schools do not receive this funding, and students receive services through the local school district, as well as homeschool and private school students. Then we have grants that both charter schools and LEAs are eligible to apply, and they are treated in the same way. This includes the middle school safety officer grant, which both charter schools and LEAs were eligible to apply, and both entities received those grants. The same thing with panic alarms grants, that they were both eligible to apply. The Student Diagnostic Initiative, this is related to the elementary handheld device for the elementary reading, and it is an optional thing for charter schools to elect to be part of, but if they do, then they are treated in the same manner as the school districts. School breakfast, if a charter school has an eligible program and they qualify to be part of the school nutrition, then they also are treated the same way as a school district that meets that eligibility. So I believe it is a reimbursement of 30 cents a breakfast if you provide that school breakfast. School bus replacement. This might be a surprise to some, but charter schools are eligible for the school bus replacement. The eligibility to receive this is that you have to have bought a brand new school bus. It is only eligible for replacement after 20 years or 250,000 miles. And the school bus can only be used for transportation of students to and from school. If it is used for other things, then those miles have to be reimbursed to the state. So in short, a charter school is eligible just like a school district, but it is, obviously charter schools haven't been around as long, so probably not many would be eligible at this time. So now we get to, well, that is $8.8 billion out of our total. I think we're probably at about 98%, somewhere around there. And we get to the items that charter schools are not available to charter schools. The cooperative innovative high schools, these are schools that are approved by the State Board of Education, and funding is approved and restricted by the General Assembly for early colleges. And I'm not quite sure how many we have at this point, but it's probably about 80 or 90 schools that are eligible for this funding. The school-based child and family support teams, these are for restricted grants for eligible schools per the legislation, for school nurses and social workers at, I believe it's 100 elementary schools, and it is in conjunction with a DHHS grant. Children in private psychiatric residential treatment facilities, these funds go to those facilities for and are restricted to those facilities. So that is $46 million that the charter schools are not eligible for. The last section, $43.7 million, is are items funding that is administered administered by the Department of Public Instruction and benefit all public schools. The Uniform Education Reporting System, these are funds that support all our financial, students, all our systems here that the school districts and charter schools are beneficiaries of. Tort claims, the testing program, which is, provides it's the cost of the testing program, statewide testing program. The finance officer staff development of $64,000. I don't think I'll obsess on that. And EVAS. So EVAS is available. It is paid directly to SAS to cover the program, and charter schools have access to that program, and we download all their information just like the LEA so that they have that data-driven system, and as I said, it's available to all. The ADM Contingency Reserve, this isn't really the appropriate place to put this, but it is really our reserve for additional students that perhaps we did not project for. It equates to about 1,500. We usually use that on, school districts that increase that we didn't expect for really managing the budget for additional students. So that is the entire appropriations that was in that initial document under tab 1 and then broken out. So hopefully that gives you an idea of exactly what we include and what we do not include in that base state allotment. I'm going to take a 30-second break to see if we have any questions at this time, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we are back, and actually didn't get any questions, which was excellent. So one question was that an individual was having trouble finding the download of the Excel workbook. That can be found on the dashboard of the meeting thing. Was that?
Under handouts.
Under handouts, excuse me. Thank you. Okay, so moving from now, I'm going to focus on only those allotments that are included in the state-based allotment for charter schools. In other words, I'm not going to talk about those items on 1B, on tab 1B, and focus on those that are tab 1A, and how those items at the state level end up as one number for a charter school. So the on our website, and I should say many of these documents actually are on our website. They're just not pulled together like this. Our Financial and Business Services website has many pieces of information, specifically under allotments on the left-hand tab. Also in the highlights of the North Carolina Public School budget, the appropriation sheet is included every year. This publication comes out in February. And we also have this initial allotment formulas. What this is a very bare bones summary of the allotment formulas used for the to figure out how you take one appropriated number, the 67,000 positions, and how do we allocate them out to all the school districts. And I'm going to start with the school districts and kind of ignore charter schools for a little bit, because until we figure out how to allocate out to the school districts, we can't calculate the charter school amount. So I'm not going to go through all these items, but I am going to pick one from kind of each category. So I discussed earlier about the position allotment and the under instructional personnel on line 15 of the Excel sheet. you will see classroom teachers, and it explains there the allocation for each grade span. So for kindergarten, a school district receives 1 teacher for every 18 students in allotted average daily membership, I should say. In grades 1 to 3, they receive 1 per every 17, 4 through 6, 1 teacher for every 24. This does not mean that they have to use these teachers in these grade spans as designated, although they do have class size maximums in grades K through 3 that they cannot exceed, and it is 24. So other than that, they can use these teaching positions as they will. You'll see on the right-hand side it says the allotted salary. That is at the LEA average, and that is what we use for this. It's not that important for the school district because we cover the salaries, but it is for a budgeting purpose and for the charter school. These classroom teacher allotments, I don't want people to think that this is the only teachers out there. We have many teachers that are paid from other sources of funds, specifically exceptional children funds, limited English proficient funds, at-risk funds, low wealth funds. There are many teachers paid from the support programs, but these are your base classroom teacher allotment. Moving down to line 30, you'll see classroom materials, instructional supplies, equipment. The amount that is allocated for each average daily membership in a school district is $28.38 per student for classroom materials, and this is put into one of their buckets. And in addition to that, they receive $2.69 per average daily membership in grades 8 through 9 for PSAT testing. That is what creates their PRC for those materials. And that is what those dollar allotments are. They're pretty standard. Here's X amount of dollars for X students. The hospitalization, retirement, and Social Security under the employee benefits, this is also incorporated into all the allotments. There isn't a separate line, a separate allotment for benefits, but it is incorporated within as part of the salaries. Moving down to the kind of more trickier allotment categories, and when I say trickier, they're just a little bit more complex. They take in many more different variables, and they are kind of equalizers. They are the categorical programs, and starting on line 56, you'll see the categorical allotments listed. Taking at risk, which is a fairly simple allocation formula, each school district receives the dollar equivalent of the average salary of a school resource officer for each high school. And then on top of that, they receive a 50% of the funds is based on the total average daily membership in the school district. 50% of the funds is provided based on the number of students they have in poverty, which is per the Title I low income. So the more poor the students in that school district, the higher the allotment they will receive for that. So that is it does provide a differentiation between one school district. If you were to look at it per student, taking a school district and then divided by the number of students, you would see that a student with more poor students would get a higher amount per student than a school district with less poverty students. The low wealth supplemental funding, as we go down, is also a big differentiator. There are students, this funding part is based on the ability of a school district to generate local funds. Therefore, if you have a school district that is not able to generate local funds because their property taxes or their property prices are low, they have a low density of population, etc., then they receive supplemental funds from the state. Only those school districts that are below the state average receive supplemental funding. So the amount could vary from 0 to about $740 per student, depending. In theory, the school districts that receive a higher amount probably have a corresponding lower local per pupil amount. So those are the, I'm not going to talk about any of the other ones. We do have a allotment policy manual that provides detail on every allotment category, as well as exceptions, exclusions, etc., on our website. So if there are specific interests in a specific allotment category, that would be the best place to go. Moving to tab 3. What this is a it is an illustration of a school district, which I will say is Johnston County. I took theirs as for illustrative purposes. And it shows how the allocations for the initial allotments went out to Johnston County. They received 1,569 classroom teacher positions, converted at their average salary is just over $93 million. And then you can see the other position allotments and their conversion amounts. It then shows the dollar and categorical allotments by category below that. You might note that prior year transportation is included in this number. We don't receive the final transportation numbers until December. So charter schools, when we do the conversion or the calculation for the base state allotment, we have always used prior year transportation numbers. They are 1 year behind because we don't have a good number. So I think that it's fairly self-explanatory, hopefully, based on what I've already stated. You can see that Johnston County is a low wealth. It does receive $11 million in low wealth supplemental funding. And I mean, that's pretty much all their allotment categories outlined there. So when we move down, you'll see that underneath the line, the dollars per ADM before guaranteed allotment is $4,863.55. But what we need to add to that is unallotted dollars per ADM. And this is done at the state average amount. And when you go to, if you move to tab 4, you'll see a detail of what is incorporated in this $109. We take all the amounts that the state pays for on behalf of the school districts, and included in that, you can see $26 million in longevity for all the staff in the school districts, annual leave payout, and well, I'm not going to read them all to you. So, and you can see that we add that all up and we divide it by the total average daily membership in the state to get a unallotted dollars per ADM. In other words, this is the amount that the state covers for those items. And so the charter schools receive an equivalent amount as part of their state-based allotment. Separately, this year, we had a $750 one-time payment to every public school employee who was employed on November 1. Actually, it's all state employees. And charter schools are not required to pay this. However, they do receive the equivalent funding that is provided for the school districts, which accounts for $80.62. So that is how they received those funds. So in total, going back to our tab 3, you can see when you add that, the total adjusted state-based dollars per student for Johnston County comes to $5,053.39. So if you were a charter school in Johnston County, that you are getting the per pupil equivalent that Johnston County students were funded at, regardless of grade or services provided or anything else. That is the funding formula generated that amount. So when we go to tab 5, you can see that, and we have this on our website, all the school districts and what it calculates out to. There is a big difference between, you know, the highs and lows for these for the school districts. I think it's the lowest amount is about $4,700, and maybe it's 46, and then the $4,684. The maximum is $10,484. You can actually see that at Hyde County, that has about 500 students and receives a lot of supplemental funds due to the low density of students, and they have students out on islands, etc. So we don't have charter schools in there. But the average is, well, the median is 5,350, which is probably a better representation than the average. So that's pretty much how it all comes out, and we use that for our allotments when we do the initial allotment for charter schools. You can see, and this really is fake, on tab 6, kind of an old, we don't use these initial allotment formula sheets anymore, but this is for a Johnston charter school. They have 600 students. They'll receive their 600 at that base state allotment amount. And then as we go down, you'll see the items that we talked, some of the items that we talked about on 1B, which is their fines and forfeitures they received subsequently. They applied for a school resource officer grant, so they got the $28,000 that they were awarded for that. They have their children with disabilities, etc. This school, this fictional school, is not eligible for limited English proficiency funds, etc. But that's pretty much how it all works out from the General Assembly's budget through the formulas to the school districts and then to the charter schools. I will take a 2-minute break, and if you would like, we do have, I think, about 15 minutes left on this presentation. If you would like to submit questions, I will gather them now and address them. Okay, so we are back and we have received, excuse me, several questions. I will take the first one. So, does low wealth and small county funding go to the charter school based on the physical location of the charter or the LEA from where the student lives? Okay, so the law requires us to provide funding based on the local school district in which the charter is located. So all the funding at the state level is based on the location of the school. There is an exception to this, and that is first-year charters or charters that are in high growth, where the excess growth, or in the case of a new charter school, all their students are funded based on where they were previously enrolled or where they would have been enrolled if they were a kindergartner, or if they're a homeschool, private school student, the location of the charter school. This is related to budget purposes, where those students were actually projected to be in those counties, and so it is a one-year thing. But the low wealth is related to, all the allotments are related to where the charter school is located. There is a request to explain the liability insurance. This is a state-level insurance policy that covers public school employees. So we do not provide the funding out to the school districts or to the charter school. It is a state-level liability insurance policy. So there are a couple of questions about first month average daily membership and when it will be published for charter schools and the allotment. So we have received all the month one average daily membership that is used to fund charter schools, and that funding went out last week or the week before. I think it was last week. So it should be out there, and in the allotment system, every charter school and actually school district should have access or request access to subscribe to the allotment system, and you can find that on the FBS website under allotments, and you can view the allotments that have gone out there and the average daily membership used for that allotment. So if you have any additional questions, please let us know or contact the allotment section, and I'll be happy to assist you. Okay, so the question is that it appears that the charters get essentially the same per pupil funding as the LEA. So if that is the case, why can an LEA not use some of the state funding for operational needs as the charters are permitted to? So charter schools do not have any restrictions on the use of their funds except for they cannot purchase real property. They can pay for leases and mortgages with their money, but they cannot pay for real property. That is what is outlined in law. Therefore, if they want to pay for maintenance of their building, they can do so out of state funds. For school districts, they have basically the law says that the facilities are the responsibility of the locals. So it really comes down to a legal, legislative stipulation. Okay, well, that hopefully has answered all your questions. Hopefully this has provided a clear path so that if you receive questions from constituents out there, your board members, media, etc., you'll be able to provide this, at least on the state allotments. and for the funding. And, you know, I hope that this has been beneficial. If you feel like we are doing this again next week, and if you feel that there could be improvements or you have feedback, please email me. It's very helpful to receive that. And I hope you all have a lovely day. We will have the recording. We will have one of the recordings, whether we'll take the highlights, either today's presentation or the one that will be next week, and we will post one of them on our website so that others can enjoy.
Email the link out.
Oh, and we will email the link out when we have done that. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me. Have a nice lunch. Have a beautiful day outside. So, and we will see you later.